By the way, and this is not important or interesting, and I shouldn't even say this, but it's also just fun watching old movies because you get to see what life was like in olden days. Like when Neff decides to go get a drive-in beer. You know what you definitely can't do in modern day America is drive your car and have someone give you a beer that you drink off of a tray and then keep driving. Like, oh my God. And then they do in old movies too. Is they're like, "Oh, you're pregnant. Let's have a drink to celebrate." Like pregnant ladies would drink in older movies. It's crazy. I don't know how they just didn't have that figured out, I guess. Um, by the way, I mentioned that she convinces Phyllis convinces Neff to do it, but to commit murder. Please notice though, Neff was not that good a guy to begin with. He was thinking. He says he had often before he met her. He says, "Oh, before I met her, I had often thought of how I could use my skills against the company because he works in insurance. He's been an insurance man for 11 years, and so he knows things about the insurance industry. So he has already thought about how to scam his company out of money. So he's not that. It's not like this is not a story about a perfectly nice guy who gets corrupted by Phyllis. Like Macbeth, this is the story of somebody who was already thinking about doing evil, and she just helps him to do it. She's also thinking about doing evil, and they help each other do it. But the point is, he's not like a nice guy who's seduced by her. He's kind of a bad guy to begin with. It's just that he hadn't put it in his mind. He hadn't put his ideas into practice yet, but he's been thinking about it. So two things. Before he meets her, he's ready to have sex with her when she's married to someone else, and he's thinking about scamming the company, but hasn't actually pulled the trigger on actually doing anything. Cool. Okay. By the way, notice that when he says he was thinking about scamming the company, he's treating it like a puzzle. That's exactly what Keyes does. It's an intellectual game. It is satisfying to have a little puzzle to play with. Sherlock Holmes is like that too. He likes puzzles. But that's very different from fighting for justice or he's not doing it for a good reason. He's doing it for mental entertainment. Keyes says he's got this little man that tells him something's wrong. That little man is supposed to be like your conscience or something. But that's not what's operating here in Keyes. He just he knows something's wrong and he wants to solve a puzzle like people play Sudoku on the trains. It's not connected to justice or goodness or fairness or right or wrong. It's just a game. Murder is a game for Neff, and solving a murder is a game for Keyes. Nowhere in here are we talking about right, wrong, justice, goodness, truth, whatever. Good. Okay. Notice, by the way, in terms of like the larger idea about corruption, Keyes, because he's an insurance agent, he's seen so many people try to scam the system. And as a result, he can't trust anyone ever. He mentions that he was going to marry somebody. He had a fiancée once, but he couldn't trust her, had her checked out. Turned out she dyed her hair, and she had done all of this. She was faking. But it's interesting that when you work in, this is a world where nobody can trust anybody. No one is happy. No one's purely in love in this movie. All the love, there's no nice couple in the story that we like. Lola and Zacchetti, Lola loves Zacchetti, but Zacchetti's a fucking asshole who clearly would murder her if he caught her cheating on him. And he's just such a brute. He's a terrible person. So that's a fucked up relationship right there. And every relationship, and Keyes used to have a fiance, and he couldn't trust her because the insurance company taught him trust no one. And Neff, obviously getting involved with a married woman, committing murder with her. She hates her husband and is going to have her husband murdered. She probably had the guy's wife murdered when she was the nurse, when the wife had pneumonia. This is a world where there are no good examples of romantic relationships because greed. And just greed and suspicion and really capitalism, right? The insurance company is about money, and Phyllis is interested in money, and neither Keyes nor Phyllis nor Neff nor anybody is happily married. Love so it's not just about these characters. It suggests that everywhere, money, good guys in the insurance company, bad guys scamming the insurance company, doesn't matter. Neither side can have love because it's a world where money kind of rules over everything. Cool. Okay. The other thing, I'm gonna actually I'll come back to that later. Another good shot in the movie I wanted to talk about that I thought was really cool is when they actually commit the murder. Now I know students often like things to be more. Sorry, I'm moving some pages around. Students like things to be more violent or more graphic or whatever, and I understand that because I also like a crazy graphic murder, and there'll be some graphic murders in movies in this class. But I really enjoy the way the murder is done in this movie. That when Neff is strangling Phyllis's husband. Um, the camera just stays on her face and she doesn't blink, she doesn't cry, she's not scared, she just stands there, and it's more important, I think, to show what an ice cold person she is during the murder, um, than it is. I don't need to see that dude getting strangled. It doesn't really matter as much. But it tells me so much more to leave the camera on her face, and it solves two problems. So number one, I get to learn about her character more, and she's the main character, so I should find out more about her. But also, it solves the problem of in the old days you weren't allowed to show graphic murders. As you guys probably noticed when Neff gets shot at the end of the movie, it's not very graphic. He just goes, ugh, that's about it. He's shot. They put a little stuff on his thing, a little fake blood on there. Yeah, okay. Let's talk really quick about actuarial tables. I can't believe I'm saying that in a class. Um, uh, Keyes mentions the actuarial books, actuarial tables. It's worth understanding what that is because it's something you're probably not familiar with. Actuarial tables are like statistics. Um, so the company has statistics. For example, there's 10 volumes on how people commit suicide. And it lists off people by age, by sex, by race, and then it lists off all the different ways that they kill themselves, falling, poison, gunshot, and then it subdivides what kind of gun, what kind of fall, what kind of poison. And they have all these statistics on people because the insurance company's whole job is to predict behavior, right? You're supposed to know, and then they use the statistics. They use the statistics. Got it. They use the statistics to predict what people are going to do so they can figure out how much money they should be charging them for the insurance. Because if someone is likely to kill themselves, they don't want to give that person a lot of money in the case of their death or whatever. But the point is that it's a very nasty way of looking at the world because instead of seeing people, you see stereotypes. You don't see an individual. The insurance company, the way they look at the world is they say, well, this is like an older black male, and statistically there may be health problems there, and he's a drinker, and his individual situation doesn't matter to them. They just see statistics. It reduces human beings, just like you want to trade your husband in. Phyllis wants to trade her husband in for cash. That's changing a person into money. But the insurance company changes people into numbers and statistics so they can predict shit. Both of those are very inhuman ways of looking at the world because you don't treat human beings like human beings. You treat them like numbers, money, or statistics. I'm sure you guys are. I'm not just a statistic, right? I'm a person. I'm sure you guys have had this one. Like, for example, car insurance is more expensive for people under 25 because people under 25, statistics show, are more likely to get into an accident than older people because they like to drive fast or do drugs, whatever. But then you might be like, but I'm not like that. But they don't care about that. They don't give a shit about you. They just care about the statistics. It's worth pointing out, many of my students know the movie Fight Club. It's worth pointing out that that's what Edward Norton does for a living in Fight Club. He does actuarial tables. That's why he knows about plane crashes and all of this stuff. It's a kind of evil math. And the creepiest example of these kinds of tables is these guys. The other thing these guys do is they crunch numbers for companies. So, for example, let's say you have a plane, an airplane, and the plane has, I don't know, 500 seats, 300. I don't know what fucking airplanes. So let's say there's 200 people on the plane, right? And then they're like, oh shit, we think the plane is something wrong with it, it might crash. And then you go, what's the chance that it's going to crash? Well, it's only like 1 out of every 100 planes. 1% of planes will crash, probably. That's like statistics, right? Well, it's probably only one. There's this problem in all these planes, but it doesn't mean 100% of them are going to crash. 1% of them are going to crash. So they go, okay. And they go, if 1% of the planes crashes, how much money do we have to pay the families of all the people who died? And they go, okay, well, let's calculate it out. It's this much money. And then they go, okay, what's more expensive? Paying the dead people's families from 1% of planes crashing or fixing all the planes? And they go, fixing all the planes is more expensive. And they go, okay, well then let's not do that. Leave the thing, let 100 people die, and we'll pay their families when they die because it's cheaper than fixing 100 planes, right? It's cheaper to pay. If you have 100 planes and only 1% of them are going to crash, and that means only 200 people are statistically likely to die, and then you figure out you can fix the plane so no one dies, but that's more money than just not doing anything and letting the plane crash and paying out 1% of planes crash and paying out 100 people. That's actuarial tables. That's actuarial math. That's what Ed Norton does in Fight Club. And it's the same kind of thing. It's treating people like statistics, treating people like cash, treating people like numbers. And it's really important. It's not just the bad guys in this movie that do this. It's everybody. Okay, see you in the next video.